Hey, what's up? Thank you for watching. I'm here with Dr. Danny Dunnivan, who is the executive director of the General Baptist, and I've known Dr. Dunnivan since I was a teenager. Isn't that crazy? And what wild times for you to become the spiritual leader of 120,000 people across the world. So you kind of got thrown to the wolves, man. How are you feeling?
Actually, it's been a fun time. It's a difficult time, of course, for the church, but I'm just absolutely been excited about getting to connect with General Baptists all over the world, trying to make sure that to visit places I can be and connect with as many folks as I can during this time. And I love that. I love being able to do that. That's part of something I've always loved about connections with General Baptists, is being able to, it's a big family in some ways, and like the church is, and I just love that part of it. So this has been an exciting time for me, and I'm just enjoying that.
Yeah. I prophesied to your best friend that you would become the leader, and I think he thought I was joking, but I really was not joking, and it's on the record. So, and you know what his response to me was? There's no way he's going to do it.
I know.
He's like, there's absolutely no way. I'm like,
you're talking about Josh Carpenter, and Josh, of course, is supposed to be my backstop in life to help guide me, keep me from making these kinds of decisions sometimes. But he encouraged me to do this too, and so I heard about this thing that you said, and I said, no way, there's no way I'm going to do that thing either. I would not have thought that a year ago at all. So.
Well, look what the Lord has done, and I'm excited about it. And, just in the season that I'm at as a pastor, and I'm sure it's this way all across the nation, really all across the world, because I'm connected to some of our other ministries, and especially in Honduras and Philippines. It's a difficult season to be a pastor, but I feel encouraged because the scripture is so clear that God promises to build his church. And so I'm hoping that you can shed some light on kind of what you're seeing, how we can look with optimism towards 2021.
Yeah, absolutely. You said that he will build his church. The one thing that I've said over and over again to folks is, and I've even, some of the churches I've gotten to preach at, I try to encourage them with that, to say, there is no time that the scriptures give any other hope for the world than the church. And the church is not something that's a flash in the pan. It's been through these kinds of things before. And the church is the only organization you ever come in contact with that is forever.
Yeah.
There is no end to this thing. It goes on and on. We get to continue, our life together for eternity. And so there's no time when the gates of hell will prevail against the church.
I had a hidden dream. I thought maybe whenever I was in college, I would go to law school and work my way into politics, because I think it'd be awesome I grew up in Missouri, where you're at right now, to be the governor of Missouri or a state representative or something like that. I heard Rick Warren say, if you're considering being in politics, just know the change or effect is just temporal. But if you decide to be a pastor, it's an eternal change. And I thought that's so powerful because, the impact feels not as great because of the cultural situation, but being a pastor, and I think even more so being a pastor that's steadfast, built up on hope and encouragement that's found in the Word of God, looking forward to 2021, believing revival's coming, declaring it, prophesying it, encouraging other people to look around and be aggressive for the kingdom in this season is really, really more powerful than ever before, because I think what God's going to do in 2021 far surpasses than anything I've seen him do, at least in my lifetime.
Yeah, I do. I think that, as we're starting to see a light at the end of the tunnel here with hopefully vaccines coming out soon here in the United States and already going in places around the world, I think that when we get to maybe by the middle of the year next year, things are going to start to feel like a truly post-COVID, post-pandemic life. And I think that, what we do now and the faithfulness we bring today will bear fruit in those days. And I really do believe whenever we start seeing that transition take place, that there's going to be an opportunity for a whole lot of momentum, and the church is going to feel I feel that, I don't think you're right. I think it's going to feel like a revival time, that everything is going to be as I said to you before. I think it's going to be up and to the right, and you're going to see opportunities for the church that we haven't had in some time. People are going to be open to the gospel and open to the connections. They're craving those now and been starved by those kind of connections that the church can provide, and that we are really great at, especially our General Baptist churches. That I really do think that as we get into the second part of next year, that the kind of feeling that we have now, of discouragement even sometimes, that there's coming a different time, and we have to begin preparing for that, because God is going to move in that time, and we have to be prepared to be able to follow in the directions that opportunities for ministry present themselves in our community.
So what does that preparation look like? So how do we measure like our attendance now, and then knowing that maybe the next 6 months should be 6 months of boot camp, preparing for whenever folks are more ready to return? And I know my church is a pretty decent size, probably one of the larger churches in the General Baptist movement, and it can be discouraging to people who are used to having more people sitting in the auditorium on Sunday mornings, and they're not there for whatever reason, because they're being careful or they're watching online or whatever. So how do we measure attendance and giving and those typical points of success as we gear up for what God's about to do? And then, how do we encourage folks? Like, what's your wisdom and advice?
Part of that is, I would first preface everything you say, my wisdom and advice. There are pastors like you and others that are out there that are in the trenches that are doing this work, that you feel it every day in ways that, I'm not in a local church every Sunday other than just traveling around. So I know you feel it in different ways, and you've got people pulling on you from people in your church saying you should do it this way, you're not doing it right. First of all, just say to pastors out there that, no one's has had to deal with this kind of a day to lead through, and give yourself a little bit of grace. Of course, use all the discernment that you can, and look to the one who knows all things. But at the same time, you have to realize that there is going to be decisions that you have to make, and you have to go on, and you're doing the very best you can. And know that there are lots of folks that are praying for you, probably in your own congregation, that may or may not be saying something about it. And so be encouraged out there. But I think in terms of looking down the road, first thing I would say is that don't tread water right now. Don't just wait for this to be coming along. I think that in any day when you're trying to lead anything, you always need to be looking ahead. What is it that we've got that God's doing right out here that we're going to need to be ready for? And you need to strategically begin to think about what is it that looks like. Yeah. What are the metrics that we can begin to look at even now? Yeah. Like you said about attendance or whatever. I don't know that attendance is the best example right now of what a good metric is, but you're always looking for those indicators of future performance, right? And I think that connections that you're making, engagement with folks, try to figure out ways to measure the ways that you're engaging with people in your community, the way that your church is engaging that way. I'm a big fan of trying to get as simple a metric as you can and just go all out for it. And what you'll do is that everything around it ends up kind of going in the same direction. I really do think community engagement right now, and engagement with people, how you can measure that, whether that's not just people sitting in the pew in the church right now, but it's who are you connecting with, and other kinds of services you're doing in your community, and look at ways to try to maximize that as much as you can. That's true in any time. That's a good thing to be doing strategically in any time, but I think right now especially, because what that's going to do is give opportunities for people to connect with your church, connect with your ministry, so that whenever you get down the road and those opportunities for gathering come back, you have opportunity to deepen those relationships and to leverage that thing that you've already started for, working in those people's lives, because they're going to be people that this has really been a time that they've been searching and thinking. They may have been reading or things about that they've been open to that they've never been open to before. They may have encountered the gospel and outside the church, and the church comes back online, so to speak, completely. There are going to be opportunities for you to take those seeds and to water them, and for them to grow and and to become something that is beautiful whenever God does his work in their lives. You just put yourself in the best position, I think, by looking at those metrics that you can look at right now and pushing as hard as you can for them. Don't just, say, well, when that time comes, we'll do that. No, right now, God's working right now. It may feel hard right now, but God does great things in moments like this. And, the things that we see that people celebrate take a lot of work going in and take a lot of, thought and innovation in difficult times. They bear fruit, whenever things begin to transition, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's really, really crucial. And we have to be thinking like that. And we have to be looking with optimism. On our Sunday evening, 6 p.m. service this past week, I just took full responsibility as a pastor for any discouragement anybody in our congregation has felt in this season. And I just said that time has come to an end because it's time for us to push forward. If you ever played Nintendo, like the regular Nintendo, the NES that came out, there was a game on there called Punch Out, and you'd punch some
Mike
people.
Tyson?
I don't know if it was Mike Tyson's Punch Out or just generic Punch Out, but you'd have like these stars that like went around somebody's head before they were about to pass out. And I'm like, I felt a little bit like that, discombobulated in this season, but that season for me has come to an end. And so one of the things that we're doing is a cross-functional team of people from every department in our church getting together and just dreaming what does 2021 look like? And then, for us to get to where we need to be as a church, let's start to plan and dream big about what that looks like. And then we sort of preface it with 4 major categories. We want salvation. That's what we believe revival looks like. Salvation and baptisms. We want marriages and relationships restored. We want generosity unleashed. And we want the next generation of leaders raised up. And so we just believe that there's a shortage of next generation leaders. So we're going to invest heavily into junior high age in particular right now and give them opportunities to minister. So I think that's really important. Like, let's do that. Let's go do that. But what do you think revival looks like in 2021 at the second half, like you're saying? Because undoubtedly the church has changed forever.
Yeah, I think those are really great metrics to look at. Some of the classic things that we're going to be able to go back to, and they're going to start making sense again in ways that they don't make sense right now. Even, one of the things that some people look at even in days like this is, like you're talking about, like generosity and financials. I think those are really weird this year. Even in our ministries here, I'm very skeptical about what anything means right now. And I think you're going to see return to, traditional measures that are going to make a lot of sense again, that don't make a lot of sense right now. But I really like what you said about, focusing on leadership development. I think that right now, what you're doing with a staff, and you're pouring into them and trying to make that all strong and healthy, it will pay benefits later on that are incalculable. And, you and I, we've talked a lot before about the importance of next generation leadership development. And that's it. I mean, it is an essential thing for a church and for any organization, but especially for the church to, in this day, be able to invest in its young people. And because ministry looks really easy for people like you and me who do this for this is our gig, so to speak.
Yeah.
But you also are preparing people to be ministry in whatever vocation that they end up going into whenever you invest in young people like that. Martin Luther once said that one of his mantras was that every Christian is ordained to the ministry at their baptism. And that means we all are ministers of the gospel. We all are bringing the gospel to bear and wherever we are. And that's where the power of the church is. It's not just an official leaders who do things like me or like you, but it's all those people that we unleash to bring the good news wherever they are, because the good news is something that it touches every aspect of life and in whatever things we do. And you don't have to be an official leader.
I'm taking a seminary class right now called Revival History, all the way from the days of Jesus through the Reformation. And in our discussions, we were just talking about how in the early days of the church, you couldn't even attend church unless you were a baptized believer already. And so the only way that the gospel was actually carried was through people who had heard the gospel, received the gospel, was baptized, and then would go work in the coal mine or wherever they were at and would share the gospel in that relational connection. And I'm like, there's so much power in that, because in so many ways we've abdicated the responsibilities as messengers of Jesus to a couple of clergy, and then it allows us to rest on our laurels instead of going out and being commissioned. And maybe that's one of the things that God's trying to do in 2020 is mobilize the kingdom.
Yep. Yeah, I've always said that I think that one of the reasons God called me into this kind of full-time service is because this is what I need in order to keep me, close to Him. That is not necessarily a marker of me being more spiritual, but maybe it's a marker of me being more needy than some others. And it's a great, heroes of the faith are the people that are the unsung folks who simply do their thing in their community. And I mean, that's again going back to what the church looking forward is going to be doing. I think looking at how you are able to interact with your community, and some of the things we can do, public big events kind of things, we can't really do that right now, but you can still do service in your community in those one-on-one ways and in those relational ways that, whenever your church is healthy and all of the folks are ministry, all the folks are ministers, it kind of, you see that, it blossoms in moments like this, I think.
Do you think 2021, the second half of it especially, is going to be one of the greatest seasons in church history in the United States?
I think it has the potential of being a pivotal moment. Of course, every time you've seen a great moment of like that in the history of the United States or anywhere, there is some unique aspects and contexts that happen with that. And I think that we are definitely sitting in a time that could definitely be true. We haven't had anything just like this time we're living in a very long time, memorable to any of us. And so I think with all of the different components that are unique to this time, I really do think that this could be a big moment. One we'll look back on and go, wow, that was a really terrible time. But we get to see God do what God does. He takes bad things and redeems them and makes things that are amazing and beautiful and things we can celebrate out of it.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I'm looking forward to what God's going to do in 2021, and I wanted just an opportunity to encourage other pastors and other church leaders. Like, now's not the time to stop. Yeah. Now's not time to give up. I heard one denominational leader of a different denomination say they closed down 5 churches in one city, and that's just a bad thing to happen. And so now's not the time to give up. Now's not the time to give in. The best is really just around the corner. So hold on, get prepared for it. What are your final words?
Yeah, I think that, we've seen churches that are, and I don't know, my internet maybe slowed down on me here. So, but we've seen some churches, like you said, that have struggled. I always, some of the church leaders that I've seen out there that have been the most discouraged are really some of the ones that are best positioned right now in order to be able to lead the church going forward. That their churches, part of the reason they're feeling so discouraged is because they're those churches that are highly engaged, their community is highly engaged, and they're not able to do that right now. But they really are in a place where if they can kind of cast that vision going forward of what God can do, they're really well positioned in order to be able to reach their community. And I'm talking about churches that are in small towns, in rural contexts, as well as those churches that are larger churches that you think as traditionally being, successful out there. I think success is, a weirdly defined term in a lot of ways, especially in the church. So I think that I just would want to say to pastors and the church leaders out there that keep doing what is the right thing to do in these times. The ministry of the gospel and the truth of the gospel is unchanged. There is nothing that a pandemic can do to make any of that different. You just have to look for the ways that the thing has always been true, and that is the bread and butter of what the church does. You find ways to do that today, and be encouraged that God is still on the throne, and He is still blessing the church, and He's right there ready to engage with you and to empower your ministry today, just like any other time.
Man, so good. Thank you, Dr. Dunnivan.